In part 3 of our visit with Jeremy Conn, we learn of the origins of the Jeremy and Mo connection, how it started, and how Jeremy was taken by surprise. Jeremy also touches down on the Big Mo show and what that meant to him, along with the outpouring of affection during and after the show. And to wrap up part 3, Jeremy describes the best day of his life. Be sure to have tissues nearby. So how did that come to be? I mean, what about Mo in one of his phone calls to you guys that really triggered a switch with you that you said, I gotta get to know this guy, this kid a little bit more because he's special?
So I've always had this thought process, and a lot of people don't agree with me when it comes to radio, that even bad callers can be good callers in what you make of them. Okay, so, and that's not what I'm saying about Mo. What I'm saying is a lot of times people will hear a child and be like, I don't want to take it because you never know where it's going to go. Or we've got plenty of callers that are bad callers that I try to have fun with. Sometimes it's at their expense, sometimes it's at mine, but it's something that I like to give everyone a platform. So the first time he called in, he's like, hey, I mean, they were still running the promo and I can still hear his voice and just laughing back and forth. And the few times that he made me laugh, but then it just kind of hit me the one day because our promotions director, Dave Burgess, so with all the cutbacks in radio, which we've all seen, guys are taking on other jobs, Dave Burgess ended up being the promotions director for 105.7 and Mix 106.5, our sister station. And we had these things called daily sheets back when we were doing radio in a studio, where every hour it'd be like, hey, come see Terry Ford at Dunkin' Donuts on Friday. Don't forget about the whiskey tasting we have next Thursday. You know, like, you're supposed to read one every hour. You initial it to let them know you read it and write the time of it. So he came in to change out the daily sheet, and Mo had just called. Scott and I were just talking about him in a break. I'm like, this kid's amazing, man. They said he's 9 years old, and he sounds like he knows what he's talking about. He's listening to everything. And Dave turns around and goes, you guys talking about Mo Gaba? And I'm like, huh? He's like, Mo Gaba. He said, the kid, he's blind, he's got cancer. And I'm like, no, that's not our Mo. Like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, there's this kid that he's down at Johns Hopkins, and he comes to our cancer-thon, and he does it every year. And he's very outgoing, he dances, he's got the best laugh. And I'm like, is that him? And I started asking around, and I immediately in the next commercial break went over to the guys at Mix 106.5 and said, hey, what can you tell me about Mo? And they're like, oh man, Mo's the best.
So he had been calling there for a while.
Yeah, well, so whenever they did their cancer-thon down at Mix 106.5, they got to meet him and hang out with him for a day, and what they do is incredible. I mean, you know it. The charity work is amazing that a lot of people will put their time into. So with that being said, I found out more about him, and then shortly thereafter, he sent a letter to us asking us to come speak to his elementary school, which Scott and I went out. He had it written in Braille, and then they translated it for us.
This was 9.
Mm-hmm. 9, maybe 10, maybe going on 10, because I'm trying to think of when it crossed, because his birthday's in January. So we went out to his school, and I'll never forget it. Scott's like, hey, let's do Who's On First? And I'm like, really? He was like, yeah. So he printed it up. Scott had this idea. We start doing it, and the kids are looking at us like, what are these guys talking about? You know, but it was funny. The teachers were all laughing. The kids are there looking like a dog that's been shown a card trick. Like, they had no idea what's going on. Like, what the hell are these guys doing? And then Mo's like, hey, I want to talk to you guys about my friend. So he comes up and he takes the mic, and like, he just owns the room. I mean, it was like seeing Andrew Dice Clay for the first time. Like, he owned the stage, and I'm like, why are we here? Just let him talk to everyone. And he was talking to people in the crowd, and it's just, I joke with him, I said he's got the gift of Gaba, and he always laughs because he loves using his name. Like when we were doing the show, and he said, we're going to Mover time. He's just special, man, and he doesn't think about himself. He thinks about everybody else first. When we were doing the show, the first thing he came to me and said, I went to talk to him. I got here probably around 1 o'clock that day. Go over things and see what you want to do. Do you want to take us in and out of breaks? Do you want to set up certain segments? And I said, I got a ton of guests set up. He goes, the first thing I want to do is, he had a friend that passed away the night before. He goes, I want to do a moment of silence for him. So I kind of walked him through it, like how to do it. And then, you know this, anytime, like I think in the news too, anytime you're delivering a message that's deeper or it's sad or you're telling, the hardest thing about it is transitioning out of it. So I transitioned us out of it to get him back, to where he could talk to his guests. And Scott just happened to be our first guest on the show. But that's his thought process is, you know, he wants to let his mom know that he's thinking about her and thinking about him. And he's one of the best. Like I said, if I could switch places, I'd do it in a heartbeat, man. And like I normally keep my emotions fairly in check for the most part. It hits me when I'm by myself, actually. But I was doing press box radio, and Stan Charles asked me a question about him. And I started crying on the air, and I'm like, oh my God, they're going to have this saved for years. But I mean, realistically, I don't care about that. But especially, I guess, because I talk when I'm by myself, like I try to keep my emotions in check. Because if I get out of hand, it's a freaking roller coaster, man, and you can't get it back. So, but he does. He means, and my wife's starting to realize how much he means a lot to me.
Now, the Big Mo Show was a big hit.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I listened for the longest stretch of time to 105.7 The Fan that I've listened to in a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
And he did a great job.
Yeah.
Regardless of the things he's going through, he just did a great job.
Well, I said this to somebody else, and I don't want it to come across the wrong way. Part of me wonders if he's so outgoing and he's so confident because he hasn't seen the world. Like, the reaction when you say something, you catch somebody off guard, or someone gives you that weird look. But I just think he's inherently special. Like, when we were sitting here talking about different things that we wanted him to do and how this whole thing was going to go, I didn't even know some of the things that were going to happen, and he just rolled with it. Like, my mic went out, and he goes, oh no, I guess you guys are going to have to listen to me for the rest of the night. Jeremy's mic has gone out. My favorite one was the Movertime thing, where he goes, all right, guys, we're going into Movertime. We're going to keep this crazy train rolling. It's me, Mo Gaba, and my co-host, Jeremy Conn. We'll be back right after these messages. I'm like, messages? Like, it's just, I mean, I was telling somebody else, I said, I know this was all about him. It's something I will absolutely never forget. I do this, it's a glorified top 5 list called I've Got 5 on it. On my show where we talk about 5 of anything. Last night we did our 5 hall passes, but we're not going to get into that today. On Monday we did top 5 greatest days of your life, and I said, look, you can exclude the day you got married, your kids being born. Those should always be on that list without a shadow of a doubt. And I even told some of the stories about them stopping the Martin Luther King Day parade from me to my son Peyton was born on MLK Day. They stopped the parade for me to get through because I was racing to the hospital. I didn't want to miss his birth. It was so important to me. I'm racing. I get in a car accident in the parking lot. Finally get there, and he was born 9 hours later. So, yeah.
Well, you didn't miss it.
No, I didn't miss it, and I didn't miss either one of my kids being born. But, there's a lot to, just in talking about that and your best days. But I said the best day of my life so far, and I know maybe it sounds a little pretentious, was that night. I left here, he was so exhausted after talking, and he was getting ready to fall asleep. And I even told him to take a nap while I was here before the show, because I said, you're talking that much, you do. You're not used to it yet, it'll wear you out. And I sat in my car out front for like a half an hour, and I was like crying and smiling and laughing, put on some music, and then left. And when I get home, I opened up, Facebook and Twitter, and there were, I'm not kidding, there were like, in between my text messages as well, there were like 1,500 messages. And I've been locked out of my work email for a week now, because I got a new phone. I got to go through this whole process to get it unlocked. I don't know how many messages I have in there. I'm not looking forward to finally figuring that thing out, but it's a special night, and it's like, I feel so fortunate to be a part of something like that, I don't care what I do in the rest of my career. I'm not going to top that. I'm not going to top that night for what it meant to him and what it meant to me.